How can I overcome imposter syndrome and feel more confident in my achievements? Today, that is the question that we're going to tackle. And as a matter of fact, I've got my hands on about 10 to 20 questions that are most Googled by high performers, achievers like yourself. And we're going to take the next 10 to 12 to 15 podcasts and we're going to talk to those questions specifically. If you really like that, maybe we'll go further. But today, the first one, these are strategies on how to overcome imposter syndrome and to feel more confident in your achievements. First things first, what is imposter syndrome? Here's our working definition for today. Imposter syndrome is the persistent belief that one's success is absolutely undeserved. It's undeserved, and that others will at some point find out that they're not as competent as they appear. Now, whatever you want to call it, and this is a relatively new term, or at least, from my standpoint, I can identify with this. I know personally, I've dealt with this and I have had conversations with people about this. So this is a real thing, obviously. It came about, the phrase actually was coined in the 70s, but I haven't really been, hearing it, but in the last 5 years or so. But imposter syndrome was coined in the 70s, and researchers found that high achieving individuals, especially women, often experience these types of feelings. However, it's since become clear that people from all walks of life can feel this way, and they feel like they're imposters. And we're going to talk about how to unravel that today. So let's dive deep into this, pocket, into this idea of imposter syndrome. If you've ever felt this way, if you've ever doubted yourself, you ever doubted your abilities, have you ever felt like a fraud? Have you ever felt like if people really knew who I was, that I wouldn't have the same sort of respect, I wouldn't have the same sort of attention or love that I'm currently getting? Or have you ever just questioned yourself? Question whether you're truly deserving of your achievements. If that's the case, then just know from the beginning that you're not alone. You're not alone. So let's talk about why this is relevant. Why it's relevant. So if you're a high achiever, someone that is a high performer, or, have a desire to be, you're more likely to experience this imposter syndrome because you set very high expectations and then you constantly are pushing yourself towards them. And you're constantly outside of your comfort zone, which is good because that's where growth takes place, is outside of your comfort zone. This feeling often arises from comparing yourself to others. And that's really the thing. And I think, just me, over the last decade, particularly the last 5 years, our lives have become so intertwined, so embedded in social media that before maybe your social group was, your close friends and family. That could be maybe 5 or 10 people realistically, that you're comparing yourself to. Now you're comparing yourself to people you don't even know, people across the world, people with completely different circumstances, and also people that you don't even know if this is true about them. So comparing yourselves is where this feeling comes from. And you begin to internalize your accomplishments or lack thereof, their genuineness, if they're actually genuinely success in your accomplishments. So that is the origin of an imposter syndrome. So if you feel or have felt any of that, this podcast is going to really help you. Before we get going, I would like to say thank you guys so much for hanging out with me again today. Please make sure you're checking out the show notes. I did as best I could, and I synced everything down into one link. So whatever you're looking for our podcast website, our digital marketplace, you're looking for our digital course, which I tell you, thank you guys who are purchasing that. A lot of you guys are buying the 31 days to new beginnings as we come up on the new year. Now, you don't have to wait till the new year to get it, obviously, but it'd be a great time to do it. And a great time to support the podcast. But yeah, thank you guys who have already purchased and are putting out really good ratings, really, really good ratings on. We spent a lot of time. There's a lot of energy and that went into creating that 31 Days to New Beginning. And I know you're going to get a lot of good information there, and you're going to get a lot of support, and it's really going to help you. And once you buy it, it's yours. You can listen to it as many times as you want. There are worksheets involved, the whole 9 yards. You can go through it at your pace, and there's a number of days there to support you. Of course, you can reach out to me and ask questions, et cetera, et cetera. But thank you guys. If this is your first time listening, please make sure that you do subscribe to the podcast and you subscribe. I don't care whether you're looking at us on YouTube or you're listening to us on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, whatever side of the globe that you are picking us up on. Thank you, my friends in India. Thank you, my friends in Australia. And thank you, my friends in Council Bluffs, Iowa. I always give those guys a shout out. They do the most downloads. Thank you guys in LA and in Atlanta, where I live. Thank you guys in Alaska and in Japan. Thank my brothers in Africa and in South America and Brazil. We've got a lot of listeners in Brazil. We've got so many folks listening to us in Scotland and Ireland, believe it or not. Thank you guys wherever you are listening to us. As we are listening, as we are going through this, let's do this together. Let's do this together. And I am working on opening a platform for us where we can have an online community where I can jump in from time to time and we can discuss questions like this, and we can really source some really good responses to what's the purpose? To help us, to help all of us to grow. All right, let's go. The cost of imposter syndrome. What is at stake? Self-doubt. Self-doubt. It is a killer. It is something that's going to slow you down. It's going to help you to procrastinate. You're going to be less productive if you continue to doubt what you're saying. It's like you're waiting for the other shoe to fall. So it leads to the lack of confidence, this imposter syndrome, and the constant questioning of your worth. If you can't sell yourself to others, if you don't feel good about yourself, when you talk about yourself, it's going to show. So these are some of the things that are at stake, quite honestly, if we are dealing with imposter syndrome. The second thing is perfectionism. I used to think this was a compliment to be a perfectionist. It is not, in my opinion. I am not perfect. Let us have that conversation now. I will make mistakes. I will misspeak. I will probably spell words incorrectly. Things like that. I am not perfect. I am someone who tries my best to do. Here's a term that I was given a long time ago when I was a young person just entering corporate. I remember I had a manager. His name was Tim. I never forget this guy. He was such a sweet guy. He was so humble, and he was always even keel. I don't care if the house was burning down or if, it was a birthday party. He was always the same level Tim. And one day, I don't know if I asked him, I don't know how we got in this conversation, but the context is, how do you stay so, what's some good advice? And he just said, do the best you can with what you have right now. Just do the best you can. Do the best you can with what you have right now. Make the best decision you can. Be the best person you can. Do what you can with what you have right now. So in terms of perfectionism, I just do the best that I can where I am right now. My hope, my goal, my desire is always to help people. That doesn't change. Some days my emotions are higher or lower. Some days, unfortunately, my intellect is higher or lower. And I'm just kidding, but I feel that way some days because depending on what you have going on, you feel like I'm a little slow today. But my goal is still the same, and that is to help people. So I'm not going to be perfect. I'm not going to be perfect, and neither will you. That is the point. No one is perfect. So if you feel like you have to be in order to satisfy the people in your life, it's a lot of pressure on you. It's a lot of pressure on you. So the imposter syndrome feel from perfectionism is that you got to perform everything perfectly to prove yourselves to these people. This is very unhealthy. Very unhealthy. And the last thing, the cost to imposter syndrome is stalled growth. It can prevent you from taking on new opportunities. Why? Because you don't think the ones you're doing are great. So why would I take on even any more? If I've got 5 completed here, I'm not going to take on another 5 because I feel like the 5 I did, if somebody comes and checks behind me, somebody checks the math, it may not turn out okay. All right, what's the opportunity? Let's recognize imposter syndrome for what it is, and call to growth can then begin to be transformative. We can begin to grow out of this. This is an invitation to shift from self-doubt to self-confidence, self-belief, and to embrace your value. Embrace your value. So here are some solutions to imposter syndrome. Number 1, we've got to reframe our self-talk. That's sort of a core of what we talk about here on Rethink, as reframing our thoughts, because if there's a lot of negative self-talk, it's going to be challenging. None of this is going to work if you're going to continue, if you're going to continue to have negative self-talk. Challenge your inner critic by replacing negative thoughts with affirming ones. Here's an example. I'm not experienced enough. Instead of saying that, say, I'm here because I have value to add and I'm capable of learning what I don't know right now. Replace it. We're not denying, we're not pretending. We are reframing our thoughts into a more positive and optimistic path forward. Second thing is embrace lifelong learning. I got to tell you, this podcast, I do this podcast, and I can disseminate information, communicate information pretty well, and I've had a lifelong desire to be able to do that because I, in some ways, have always wanted to be a teacher. I do have a master's degree in education, and I have taught on some level, and I love to give to people. What's curious is when I'm teaching, I learn the most. I actually learn the most when I am actually presenting information to people. It doesn't matter who my audience is, because I have to do so much preparation that I have to do this research. I have to make sure the information is correct, or else I'm not going to give it out. So I'm learning, and then as I'm orating, as I'm giving this information forth, I'm presenting, I tend to hear it as well, and I'm learning along with hopefully my students and my podcast listeners. So I think it was Michael Beckwith who said, if you truly want to, the teacher is the one who's truly learning, or something to that degree. If you really want to know something, teach it. And so embracing lifelong learning is my point. Shift your perspective from I should know everything to I'm just committed to continually to learn. No one knows everything. Some people talk like they do, but they do not. Just know that you are in a continuous space of learning. Always be receptive and open to learning. The next thing is keep a success journal. Keep notes on yourself. Keep track of your successes. Document your achievements regularly. You can build up evidence of your progress. You can. And you can refer to it on those days when you're doubting yourself. You can document your own progress. So when you're having those, negative inner conversations, open your journal and say, hey, I presented this and I created that and I was able to negotiate this and I was able to facilitate that. Whatever the success is, write it down in the journal, have it accessible for yourself to refer back to kill some of that inner critic that's super negative. The next thing is shift your focus for service. Shift your focus over to service. When you focus, let me say it this way. When we focus on how our work benefits others, we are less likely to be caught up in self-doubt. In other words, you take the focus off yourself. I started off with this saying by, I just want to help people. So it's really not about me. It's about what you can give to your listener. So I don't know you personally, but whatever it is, product or service that you are, doing in your community, in your society, take the focus off of you and put it on to your customer, your client, or your neighbor, whoever it is that you're trying to help. Instead of worrying about being good enough, think about how your work can make a difference in other people's lives. Think about how your work can make a difference in other people's lives. I may never meet, and the chances are great that I may never meet all of the thousands of listeners that are in Council Bluffs, Iowa. I'm never going to meet those guys. But I have I have a really warm and good feeling that they continue to listen because something I'm saying, something I'm putting forth is helping them. It's helping them, even if it's just motivating them, even if it's just pointing them to learn more on their own in on a different format and a different platform. It doesn't matter to me. But some reason you guys continue to come back and listen. So for me, I'm thinking that's an honor, number one. But number two, they must be learning something. So maybe what I'm doing is being effective for these people's lives. And so you take your focus off yourself, you put it on your listener, you put it on, your client, whoever your stakeholder is that you are trying to help. You could be a nurse, you could be a doctor, you could be a clinical psychologist, you could be just a counselor at a high school, or where I shouldn't have said just, but you could be a counselor at a high school or college. Begin to think about less about you and more about the person that you're there to serve. And so you kind of go away from this me, and this should be focused on them. The last thing in terms of solutions to overcome the imposter syndrome, let's talk about feedback and mentorship. Constructive feedback. Get some constructive feedback from trusted, I emphasize trusted individuals. Get some guidance from a mentor. If you are a counselor, for example, maybe there's a senior counselor or a director over the department. Ask for them to do an overview, a sit-in where they kind of appraise your work while you have a student, someone you're counseling, and ask for feedback. Ask for them to be honest, because your desire is to be not perfect, but to be really, really good. Why? Because you want to help whoever it is that you're counseling. Here's some exercises that you can do. Let's go back. The self-talk exercise. Write down one accomplishment that you're proud of every day. Just one. Reflect on why you deserve it and focus on the efforts that you put in to achieve it. Exercise 1. Exercise 2, in terms of lifelong learning, take note of any situation where you feel like you're unqualified. You feel like you're unqualified. Use that feeling as an opportunity to learn something new about whatever that area is. Let's stick with counseling. Let's say in counseling, you're good with the drug and alcohol, the teen pregnancy piece, but dealing with social media, I'm not so great. Hey, take a class. Upgrade your skill set. And that may help you feel more confident to provide feedback in that area. Exercise number 3, as it relates to the success journal. When imposter syndrome arises, revisit your success journal. I already told you that. Remind yourself of what you have achieved and what you're capable of. I think that should be a regular thing for us. That's going to help us to stay in that positive atmosphere and in that positive vibration. Exercise number 4, focus on service. Identify one way your skills or achievements have positively impacted others, whether it's through mentorship, support, or expertise. And then lastly, the feedback and the mentorship, pretty straightforward. You can ask someone, first of all, in terms of the feedback, find 1 to 3 people that you trust, qualified people if you are looking for specific and clinical, type of responses and criticism. Make sure that they are qualified to give that, people you trust. Or in terms of the mentorship, why don't you try to get feedback from people that you've mentored just to see, is this information working for you? Is this good? Now, speaking of that, I just had an idea. I want to shoot out a form to you guys just to kind of get some feedback from you. Now, because you're listening every week, I shouldn't assume, that you love me so much and you're going to come back every time I post a podcast. I would like to think that, but I want to add value to your lives. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a form, which is going to be of just a few questions. I just want to get some feedback from you in terms of how you feel about the quality of things, that we talk about here. And do you feel like it's helpful for you? My assumption is yes, but I don't want to just assume. We're going to create a digital download too. And this can be used to document your progress. This is a digital download. And for now, it's going to be given away for free. Because I want to give you guys something. It's going to include morning meditations or affirmations, to kind of keep you in that positive mindset so that, you don't get into that imposter syndrome first thing in the morning. It's going to be an area for you to celebrate those small wins, document the things that you're doing really, really well and keep track of them. Also, it's going to be a portion where you can visualize your best self. What does my best performance look like? What does my best true performance look like? And then lastly, self-compassion. And in case you make a mistake, which we all do, we're going to treat ourselves better. We're going to have some grace and some leniency. None of us are perfect. So this imposter syndrome is common. I'm hearing about it more and more and more. As a matter of fact, the list that I have with the questions that we're going off of, it came from Google, and this is one of the top questions. So recognizing your value, reframing your self-talk, and celebrating your wins is going to help you overcome your imposter syndrome. What I want you to do is to listen to the podcast again, because you're always here more the second time. And I want you to remember that the world needs you. The world needs your unique contributions. There's only one of you, and you're here for a reason, and your path is yours alone. And I have to keep reminding myself, stop comparing yourself to others. It is a useless exercise. It is a frustrating exercise, but utterly useless. So thank you guys again for listening. I really appreciate it. You guys have a great day. Have a great evening. Have a great morning, afternoon, great week, great month. I'm just feeling really, really good. I want to put out some really positive energy into a space, into the universe, into this world where we need some really good energy right about now. And you do the same, because that's contagious. Just smile just because, have good attitude just because, and be nice to your neighbors. Come back soon. We'll have another great podcast for you again on tomorrow. Thank you.